I'm Dr. Leah Hart, 38, a trauma surgeon who bought herself a quiet slice of ocean and called it home. The villa is nothing fancy to anyone but me. Sunlight on pale floors, the hush of the tide, a place where the beeping of hospital monitors finally stops in my head. I was setting a glass of water by the window when my phone lit up and began to ring. I answered on speaker. "Leah, we're on the way," my brother said. His voice carried that easy grin I know too well. 20 people, 2 weeks, sheets, towels, food, have it ready, 30 minutes. I looked at the clock. 30 minutes. On the counter, the glass left a perfect ring on the wood. Outside, the water kept breathing in and out, calm, indifferent. I didn't ask who we was. He never means me when he says we. "Dylan," I said, steady as I could. "You didn't ask." He gave a soft chuckle like I'd missed the joke. "We're family, don't be dramatic." A gull cut a white line across the sky. My chest felt tight, then very still. The word family hung there like a key he kept turning in the same lock. The lock on my time, my money, my goodwill. I reached for a pen, slid a yellow notepad toward me, and wrote one word in block letters: boundaries. He kept talking, coolers, music, it'll be fun, the way he always sells a storm like a beach day. I could picture it before they even turned off the highway. Doors flung wide, footprints on the floor I'd polished yesterday, hands inside my fridge without looking up to ask. My house recast as a free resort, my name erased. "Dylan," I said again. My voice sounded like the ocean when it draws back from the shore, quiet but firm. "This is my home." "I know," he said, cheerful as a game show host. "That's why it's perfect." On the counter, the ring under my glass had dried to a faint mark. I traced it with my fingertip. I remembered a resident telling me, after a long shift, that you teach people how to treat you. It was meant for medicine. It fits everywhere. "Drive safe," I told him, and ended the call. The room went silent except for the waves and the distant hum of a weekend I had planned to spend doing nothing at all. I lifted the notepad and tore off the top page so the words stood alone. I taped boundaries to the fridge where the first open door would have to face it. Then I turned the deadbolt on my front door, not out of fear, out of clarity. In the glass, I caught my reflection: messy bun, old t-shirt, the tired eyes of someone who has said yes for years and is finally learning a better word. I picked up my phone and glanced at the clock again. 27 minutes now. The water kept breathing. So did I. This isn't going to be a fight, I told myself. It's going to be a line. If you've ever had someone treat your life like it was theirs to take, stay with me. Next, I'll open the ledger, the long list of small favors, and just this once, that brought me to this exact moment. I pulled a drawer and took out a thin black notebook, the one I used to track appliance warranties and HOA letters. On the first blank page, I wrote a title I'd never dared to put down before: What Dylan Took. The earliest entry came easy. 5 years ago, I was 33 and giddy off a promotion, still wearing my badge when Dylan pitched me his can't-lose coffee startup. He said artisanal, like the word itself printed money. He needed $50,000 just to launch, promised repayment in a year, 2 tops. I wrote him a check that night. 6 months later, the business folded. He told me the market was cruel. He told me I'd understand because I knew pressure. He didn't return the money. I told myself it was family. I underlined the number now: $50,000. I turned the page. 2 summers after that, he asked to borrow my SUV for a quick weekend trip. He sent a thumbs-up emoji Saturday morning and nothing for 12 weeks. When he finally brought it back, there were parking tickets in the glove box and coffee stains on the passenger seat like seared rings. He shrugged and said I could write it off. I paid the tickets, scrubbed the fabric, and swallowed the insult like I was hydrating. In the margin, I wrote, 3 months. Tickets, stains. Another page, my grandmother's pearls. They were simple and warm against the skin, the kind you wear to mark a life, not to flash one. He borrowed them for his girlfriend's dinner and never brought them back. When I asked, he said she loved them, like that was a receipt. I stared at my handwriting until the letters steadied. Pearls. Gone. Then his son's tuition. 16 and bright, stuck in the middle of adults who couldn't keep promises. The school called about the balance. Dylan texted, "It's due now. You know Mom would want the best for him." I transferred 20,000. The next week, at a family barbecue, Dylan lifted his wrist to check the time, and a brand new steel watch caught the light like it wanted to blind me. I remember the weight that slid across my chest, slow and deliberate. In the notebook, $20,000. New watch same week. I kept turning pages, making a neat list of small humiliations he had dressed as favors. The sure thing investments, the just this once rent help, the repeated use of our mother's name as a key to unlock whatever he wanted. Mom would want this, he'd say, and I'd see her kitchen, the soft lamp, the way she held both of our faces when we fought, and I would cave. I pressed my pen hard enough to leave grooves. Eleanor wanted respect. I set the pen down and let the truth sit. The house was quiet except for the clock and the water. 20 minutes now. I closed the notebook and moved to my desk. I opened my filing cabinet, slid out a manila folder stamped deed, and laid it flat. Title page, legal description, signatures. I read each line the way I read a chart before a surgery, slow, careful, as if the right attention could prevent blood. I tucked the deed into a clear sleeve, added my driver's license copy, HOA rules about guests, and a blank sheet labeled incident log with space for time and details. I charged my phone, I checked the camera roll and cleared space. I set another notepad by the door with a black pen. On the top line, I wrote the time. I left the notebook of takings on the counter, opened to the first page, numbers staring back like tide marks after a storm. Outside, a car horn sounded far off. I breathed in, long and even. The ledger was written. Now it would meet the present. Tires rolled over gravel like distant thunder, then the driveway filled with headlights and laughter. Doors slammed. The air shifted the way it does right before a storm breaks. I set the clear sleeve with my deed on the console table, squared the corners, and reached for the front lock. I didn't have time to touch it. The handle turned, and the door swung wide as if the house itself had invited them. Dylan walked in first, wearing a smile that pretends to be permission. Behind him came a tangle of people, coolers banging against shins, duffel bags slung low, cardboard flats of beer wobbling in someone's arms. A woman in white sneakers dragged sand across the threshold. A guy bumped the entry table and steadied it with a greasy palm. "Leah," Dylan sang, giving the place a sweeping look. "God, this is perfect." I stepped to the side so they wouldn't brush against me. "You weren't invited," I said, even and clear. He kissed the air in my direction as if I'd made a joke. "We're here for 2 weeks. Where do you keep the extra linens?" Several of them had already fanned out. I heard the fridge open and the top hiss of a can pulled fast. Music started up from a portable speaker, bass heavy, too big for the room, drowning the soft rush of the ocean I'd woken up to. Someone laughed from the kitchen. Someone else whistled low at the view. My floors had been polished yesterday. Now there were dark arcs of wet sand and the squeak of rubber soles. A woman popped a chip in her mouth and shook orange dust from her fingers onto the arm of my sofa. A man leaned back in my reading chair and kicked his boots onto the coffee table like he was testing how far the leather would reach. "Master?" Dylan asked over his shoulder, already halfway up the stairs. "Don't worry, we'll keep it tidy." I followed him, keeping my pace measured. His friends trailed behind, drinks in hand, narrating the house like a tour. He pushed open the door to my bedroom and walked straight to the windows that look over the water, as if he had paid for the glass that cut the horizon into a clean line. This one, he announced, dumping his duffel on my bench. We'll take this. You've got other rooms. You're uninvited guests, I said. You will leave. He grinned, lips pressed together like he was choosing kindness. Leah, come on. Don't make this weird. It's just 2 weeks. In the hallway, someone snorted. It's a party, a woman called, tilting her can toward me. The words settled like grit in my mouth. Party. What you throw for people you love and plan for. What you do not call an invasion you scheduled for me. Dylan went to my dresser and opened the top drawer halfway, as if extra pillows might live with my folded t-shirts. Where's the good bedding? He asked, all ease. I placed my palm on the doorframe to ground myself. Close that, I said. He left it ajar, grabbed a pillow off my bed, and tossed it to a guy in a backward cap who caught it and laughed. Man, ocean view, the guy said. Nice upgrade. Back downstairs, the speaker volume ticked up a notch. A can rolled and hit the baseboard with a hollow ping. The kitchen took on the smell of cold pizza and spilled beer. My refrigerator door stayed open long enough for the alarm to chirp, then someone slapped it shut with the heel of a hand. I stood in my doorway and watched them fill a space they hadn't earned. My heartbeat was steady now. The word taped on my fridge was nowhere in this room, but I could feel it in my bones. 5 more minutes, Dylan said lightly, like a mercy. Then we'll settle in. I met his eyes. No, I said. You won't. He smiled like I was a skittish child and leaned his shoulder into my bedroom door frame, claiming it with the casual weight of habit. Leah, he said, softening his voice the way you do for a dog that won't heel. We're family. Family shares. I stepped farther into the doorway until my shoulder touched the opposite frame. Family respects, I said. The word hung there between us, clean and cold. Downstairs. A can cracked open. Bass rattled the air vent. Someone whooped. Then I heard a glass clink, the stumble of an unsteady foot, and a wet sound like something heavy exhaling. A woman shouted, "Oops!" Laughter broke open, careless and bright. I moved to the top of the stairs and looked down. On the cream rug that warms my living room, a dark red bloom was spreading, slow and certain, a flower no one had planted. A man in a hoodie tried to blot it with a stack of cocktail napkins, pressing too hard, grinding the stain deeper. It's just wine, he announced, like naming it fixed anything. Beside him, my glass coffee table caught a shoe. Leather squeaked, and then there was that ugly scrape, metal traveling where it shouldn't, etching a line that would never polish out. The woman in white sneakers giggled, "Sorry," and lifted her feet. Orange chip dust trembled off her fingertips and freckled the couch cushion. I felt my jaw set, not rage, not even shock. Something steadier, the way your hands go sure when a bleeder opens and you know exactly what to do. I walked down the stairs without hurrying. I picked up my phone from the console table, tapped the camera, and started taking pictures. Wide shot of the rug with the stain blooming outward, close-up of the napkins already soaked, the pattern of the fiber breaking down into wet pulp. The scratch on the glass, light catching on the raw line. The boot prints tracing a map across the floor I'd oiled yesterday. I slid the angle to capture faces without making a show of it. Time stamped in the corner, location services on. I moved through my own house like a witness. "Whoa, paparazzi," someone said, half laughing. I didn't answer. I angled the phone toward the kitchen where the refrigerator door was open again and the alarm chirped, ignored. The shelves looked raided, bottles missing from the back row, deli containers cracked open, a heel of bread with fingers in it. I took 3 frames and shut the door with my palm. Dylan came down behind me, leisurely, as if he'd been touring a museum upstairs. "Seriously?" he said, eyebrows up, amused. "You're documenting?" "I'm recording what's happening in my home," I said, and took a picture of him exactly as he was, beer in hand, shoulders loose, a smirk like he'd already won. He glanced at the rug. "It'll come out," he said. "Club soda. Internet trick." "It's Merlot," the woman supplied, proud of the label. "The good stuff," another chimed. I turned and photographed the speaker on the buffet, the volume light glowing too bright. I photographed the entry mat with sand piled in the corner like a tiny dune. I photographed the empty pizza box that had sweated grease into the wood of the dining table and the ring it left when someone moved it to make room for cards. Dylan lowered his voice and leaned close as if confiding. "This is a lot, Leah. You're overreacting. Don't make a scene." I met his eyes. "I'm not making anything. I'm making a record." He chuckled, that same tired little sound he uses when he needs me to doubt myself. "God, you're tense." Across the room, a guest teetered on the coffee table for balance and set his drink on the glass. Red sloshed. A drop slid to the scratch and bled along it like ink in a cut. I took the shot. I walked to the kitchen counter and pulled the incident log from its sleeve. I wrote the time, the stain, the scratch, the open refrigerator, the names I knew, the descriptions of the faces I didn't. I wrote uninvited in plain print, not a flourish, just the truth. I tucked the log back, added the first run of photos to a new album, and titled it Occupation, Day 1. "Okay, Warden," Dylan said, tipping his bottle toward my notebook. "What's the penalty? No dessert?" "Respect," I said. "That's the penalty when it's missing." He rolled his eyes for the audience. A few of them laughed on cue. None of that changed the shape of the stain or the sharpness of the scratch. None of it changed my name on the deed. I slid my phone into my back pocket and lifted the clear sleeve from the table. The pages inside were smooth and weighty, the kind of paper that feels like it would resist water longer than most. I looked at Dylan and then at the door, already calculating light, angle, and distance for when I would need them. He took a lazy sip and grinned like we'd landed the same joke. 5 more minutes, he said. Then we'll get really settled. I slipped the sleeve into the evidence folder and pressed the clasp until it clicked. "No," I said. "We won't." I carried the evidence folder to my study and shut the door. The bass sank to a dull thud through the wall, like a tired heart. I set the folder on the desk, lined up my phone beside it, and dialed the one number I knew would clear the noise in my head. "Leah?" Priya answered on the second ring. Her voice was sunlight through blinds. Clean, no frills. "What's wrong?" I didn't dress it up. "Dylan showed up with 20 people. They've opened my fridge, stained the rug, scratched the coffee table. They're claiming my bedroom." Silence for a beat, then Priya's tone shifted into the steady gear she uses in trauma bays. "Okay, you're not the villain for protecting your home. Here's what you're going to do. Call neighborhood security, call your attorney, keep taking photos, send them to your attorney with timestamps. Don't argue with the crowd, document the behavior, say as little as possible, and make what you say count." I took a breath that reached my lungs all the way. "Copy." "And Leah," she added, "this isn't a family dispute, it's trespassing. Use the right language." I nodded even though she couldn't see me. Trespassing. The word fit like a tool that had been there the whole time. We hung up. I scrolled to Elena Brooks and pressed call. "Elena Brooks," she answered, cool and crisp. "It's Leah Hart, I need you." The words came out flat and honest. "My brother and 20 guests have entered my home without permission. They've damaged property. I have photos and video. I have my deed." "Good," she said without surprise. "Email me what you've got right now. I'll reply with your full property packet in minutes. Deed, title, HOA provisions. If they refuse to leave, security will ask them to. If they still refuse, this becomes a police matter. Keep your language simple. You're on private property without permission. Please leave. No debates. Send me the photos as you take them." I opened a new email, attached the first batch of images, and hit send. 3 dots appeared almost immediately on my screen. Her reply landed with PDFs stacked like clean plates. Also, Elena said, start a contemporaneous log if you haven't already. Times, incidents, names if you know them. The more precise, the better. It started, I said, and looked at the neat lines I'd already written. Good girl, she said, not unkindly. And Leah, do not let anyone talk you out of your rights because they share your last name. We ended the call. I forwarded the packet to myself and printed the cover page. I slid it behind the clear sleeve until the title showed cleanly through. Property Deed. Title: HOA Rule 7, Guests and Noise. The paper held its own kind of weight. A breeze found the window seam and lifted the corner of a photo on my desk. Mom at the kitchen table, sleeves rolled, a knife paused above a bell pepper. In my head, her voice arrived as if it had only been waiting for an open door. Respect begins where you stop apologizing for needing it. I'm done apologizing, I said to the empty room. I opened the Occupation, Day 1 album, and added 2 short videos, the wine spreading, the fridge alarm chirping while no one turned. I labeled each with time and angle. I set my phone to upload over cellular and watched the progress bar crawl until I saw the cloud icon settle. I checked the deadbolt on the study door, not because I feared them, but because I wanted control of this small square of air. I put my hair into a tight knot, found my spare charger, and slid it into my back pocket. I tucked the deed packet, my ID copy, and the incident log into the evidence folder and clicked it shut. On my screen, Priya's last text popped up. You've got this. Say the words. In the hallway, the bass climbed. Laughter rose and fell. A timer in my head did the same math it does in surgery. When to move, what to move with. I picked up the folder. The handle felt cool and firm in my hand. I opened the study door and stepped back toward the noise, voice ready, words chosen, not to fight, just to draw the line. I stepped into the hallway with the evidence folder under my arm. The music thumped against the walls like a pulse out of rhythm. I had my line ready, private property, permission, leave, when 2 black SUVs rolled into the drive and turned the living room windows into mirrors. A firm knock. I opened the door. 3 uniformed officers stood there, led by a tall man with calm eyes and a square jaw. Miss Hart? Officer Marcus Hale. Neighborhood security. His voice cut through the bass like a clean blade. We received your call. Thank you, I said, and handed him the clear sleeve. This is my deed. There are uninvited people inside who refuse to leave. He scanned the title page, nodded once, and stepped in. The music kept going until he said, Turn that down. It fell away like someone had pulled the plug on the ocean. Heads turned. Dylan came forward, palms out in an innocent shrug. Hey, officer, no trouble here. We're family. Officer Hale looked at him, not unkindly, then addressed the room. This is private property. You are here without the owner's permission. Gather your things. You're leaving now. A wobble went through the crowd. Some glanced at Dylan. One guy laughed too loudly. A woman muttered, She can't be serious. Another said, We just got here. Dylan lifted his chin. Leah, come on. You're calling security on your own brother? He threw it wide so everyone could hear it. I stood beside Officer Hale. You're on my property without permission, I said steady. Please leave. A guest in a hoodie swayed and bumped the coffee table. His glass tipped and a ribbon of red ran along the scratch in the glass like ink chasing a rule. I took a photo. The click sounded small and decisive. Dylan watched me. You're documenting this? Wow. I didn't answer. I slid the photo into the album as it saved. Across the room, someone opened my fridge again. The alarm chirped. He didn't even look. Officer Hale gestured to his team. They fanned out and started checking IDs, moving gently but with the kind of certainty you don't argue with twice. Dylan pulled out his phone and typed fast. A buzz hit mine seconds later. His post, my house in the frame, a caption calling me selfish for kicking out family. I showed it to Officer Hale. "We can address defamation later," he said. "Right now, we're clearing the property." "Guys," Dylan called, louder now. "Nobody's leaving. This is my sister. She just needs to relax." A man near the door shrugged on his backpack anyway. "I'm not getting hauled off for this," he said, and slipped outside. Two more followed. The room's certainty started to leak like air. The officers kept moving, patient, guiding the momentum toward the door. Dylan planted his feet. "This is ridiculous. After everything we've been through?" He edged closer to me, voice dropping. "Mom would hate this." That old key again. I let it pass me. "You didn't give me a choice," I said. Officer Hale stepped between us, not aggressive, just there. "Sir, you're leaving now. You can walk out, or we can escalate. Your call." Silence pressed in. Dylan's eyes flicked to the officer's hands, to the doorway, back to me. He picked up his duffel, slow as a dare, and slung it over his shoulder. "You'll regret this," he said, flat. I didn't move. "No," I said. "I won't." The last stragglers lifted coolers, zipped bags, stuffed decks of cards into pockets. They filed out under the officer's eyes, down the steps, into the night that had started while they were busy pretending my home was theirs. Dylan was the final shadow in the frame. He stopped in the doorway and looked past me to the water he thought he could own for 2 weeks. Then he stepped over the threshold. Officer Hale pulled the door in, and it closed with a sure, even sound. The music was gone. The house held its breath. The quiet landed like a verdict. The door settled into its frame, and the house came back to me all at once. The faint salt in the air, the hum of the fridge, the way the floor gives a little where the boards meet. I stood there, listening to the quiet like a nurse listens for a pulse after a code. Then I moved. I set the evidence folder on the dining table and fetched the cleaning kit from the pantry. White cloths, a soft brush, club soda, a small bottle of vinegar, baking soda in a jar with a taped-on spoon. I knelt by the cream rug and poured a circle of club soda around the red bloom, coaxing it inward. The stain resisted politely, the way some people do, smiling while they refuse to budge. I dabbed, lifted, dabbed again. The color lightened, but a shadow held fast, a ghost that wanted to stay. I took a photo, after first pass, time stamped. At the coffee table, I ran a microfiber cloth over the glass and found the scratch with my fingertips. It caught, bright and mean. I cleaned around it until the surface shone and the line stood alone, a story you couldn't unhear. Another photo. Scratch. Post clean. In the kitchen, I wiped greasy fingerprints from the cabinet pulls, closed the pantry tidy, and tossed the half-open boxes into a trash bag that rustled too loudly in the quiet. I washed the 2 glasses I didn't recognize and set them upside down on a towel. Every small reset cleared more of the air. My phone buzzed. I checked the screen. Notifications stacked under Dylan's post, the one that tried to turn my house into a stage and me into the villain. I opened it and scrolled. The tone had shifted while we were clearing the room. "You showed up with 20 people uninvited? That's not family. That's trespassing. She worked for that place. Respect it. If my sister did this to me, I'd be grateful she only called security." There were a few voices siding with him, emoji heat, a line about loyalty, but they were outnumbered by people who had homes and boundaries and knew the difference between sharing and taking. I didn't answer. I took a screenshot for the file and closed the app. I opened a new email to Elena and attached the fresh photos. Stain after cleaning, scratch after wipe down, cabinet prints before after. I wrote a short note. Subject, damage, initial documentation. Body, stain remains, see pic 12. Glass scratched, pic 15. Will seek estimate for rug cleaning and glass repair replacement. Request we prepare an itemized bill for damages and any fees associated with security response under HOA provisions. I hit send. Her reply came in minutes. Received. Proceed with estimates. We'll draft the demand letter once we have amounts. Good work on documentation. I plugged my phone into the wall and opened my contacts. I scrolled to Dylan and stared at the name for a long, quiet breath. Then I tapped block this caller. The confirmation felt smaller than I expected and bigger than it looked. I did the same on social media. Remove, block, done. The room didn't applaud. It didn't need to. Back at the rug, I tried a paste of vinegar and baking soda, working it in with the brush, patient, careful. The stain softened another shade. It would need a professional, I could see that. Not everything can be undone by the person who suffered it. I marked a reminder to call the cleaner in the morning, then stood and looked around. The house wasn't perfect, but it was mine again, scuffed, marked, breathing. I opened the windows to the ocean and let the air move through, salt and night slipping past my shoulders. On the table, the evidence folder sat where I'd left it, neat and ready. I added one last line to the incident log. 2300. House cleared. Damage documented. Social post archived. Contact blocked. Then I capped the pen and let the quiet settle, not as absence, but as proof. By midnight, the house had cooled. I left the windows open and sat on the balcony with a blanket around my shoulders, the ocean drawing its even lines in the dark. The rug was clean as it could get for now, the glass table shining except for one honest scar. I didn't hate the mark. It told the truth and didn't flinch. My phone chimed with a new email from Elena. She'd drafted language for a demand letter, simple, factual, dry in the way that makes judges listen. Trespass, documented damage, HOA response costs, payment due upon receipt. She asked me to attach estimates in the morning. I replied yes, and added 2 lines to the incident log, attorney drafting, estimates pending. I set a calendar reminder and let the work move to a track that didn't run through my chest. I made tea and carried it back outside. Steam rose in the chill. Below me, the deck boards held the day's warmth just long enough for my bare feet to register it before it left. Inside, the evidence folder rested square on the dining table. I could see it from here, the neat stack, the clear sleeve catching a crescent of light. It looked like a promise kept. When I opened social again, the wind had shifted there too. Dylan's caption still begged for outrage, but the comments had turned into a chorus I hadn't expected. People naming what they saw without sugar. Entitlement, disrespect, the way family sometimes dresses up a grab as a gift. A woman wrote about changing her locks after her brother started showing up with friends of friends. A man described taking his spare key back from a cousin who treated his studio like a spare closet. I scrolled a little, then stopped. I didn't need strangers to crown me right. I just needed to sleep in a house that was mine. I texted Priya a photo of the ocean night and the single lamp burning in the kitchen. Cleared, documented, demand letter coming, thank you. She sent back a heart and the words, proud of you, eat something. I smiled and broke a square of chocolate like I was obeying medical advice. Before I went in, I stood and let the wind push hair from my face. I thought of Mom at the table, that paws knife over a bell pepper, and the way she'd say my name when she wanted me to stand up straight. You can love people and still tell them where you end. Respect starts there. The ocean folded over itself and kept going. I closed the balcony door, locked it, and turned off lights one by one. At the front, I paused and pressed my palm flat to the cool wood. Not praying, just acknowledging. Then I went to bed in the room Dylan had tried to claim, slid beneath my own sheets, and felt something settle in my ribs that had not settled in years. Morning would be estimates and emails. Today had been a line. If you've ever had to draw one, if someone treated your life like it was theirs to take, tell me how you did it. What did it cost you, and what did it save? Share your story, and if you want more real, unflinching family dramas, stay with me. There's more to say.